My dear Bagginses and Buffins.
By the blood of our people, are your lands kept safe?
I see in your eyes the same fear that will take the heart of me.
So do all who live to see such times.
By all that you hold dear, this good earth.
There's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting.
Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 1 of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, our re-review, our revisit. So it's been about a year since we've watched the first episode, at least at the very first time we watched it. Some people may have watched it more. I think you watched it
I've rewatched
since
it
before, but then we've just done it again. I didn't. I only watched the first few times I watched it were all in quick succession just to understand it, and then I hadn't revisited it since.
Yes.
So, coming back at it with my already knowing how the season's going to play out and knowing how each episode is kind of going to go, I was able to look at it in a different light and try to maybe be more sympathetic to some of the scenes. Sometimes I'm a bit harsh in my criticism, especially of dialogue. So I tried to come into it with a different mind. I don't know about you.
I did too. I tried to be generous because I feel like hating on things is too much what's happening right now.
That's right. That's right. Like yeah. So I'm coming at this from the point of view as I want this to be good. And knowing, similar to how I eventually came around on The Hobbit, could I do the same with The Rings of Power? And
right.
so
I think some of the issues we kind of have, we kind of know some of these characters already, so we have expectations about Galadriel from before. We have expectations about Elrond from before.
That's a good point.
We've heard a little bit about Isildur and Elendil and these people. So
to your point there, we even have stand-ins for them kind of in the original trilogy with with Boromir, with Aragorn, Faramir, like all these characters that we are inputting those ideas onto these characters, and when it doesn't line up, we point at it and say bad.
Yeah. So now now that we're able to kind of step back, we know broadly what happens. Maybe we can look at this without try to get rid of these biases we had before when we were seeing it for the first time.
Yeah. So I guess this right out of the gate, I'm not as harsh on this first scene as I was previously. What I will say is I think it might be misplaced. I think
this is when they're in Valinor?
Yes. So
Yep.
I think the young Galadriel should maybe have been a flashback, like while she's ice climbing or something. And then I think that because this is like the very first thing we see, it gets scrutinized so heavily. But if it was a random flashback, I think a lot of people will accept it for just being a memory of hers where she remembers what she's supposed to be doing.
I mean, I'm comparing it to the original again, but the original started off with like the epilogue, and I thought that was good, and it sort of felt epilogue-ish to me.
But then they go so they go with young Galadriel, and then they show her grown up as like the epilogue type big action set piece. I kind of feel like that's maybe where they should have gone with this, and maybe throw in that young Galadriel scene somewhere else, because there's no young Frodo scene, you know what I mean? Like there's no young whoever. They come into the story after we know the epilogue, and then we can have flashbacks all we want, but then because Galadriel's part doesn't really fit with the rest of the epilogue, where it's more about the elves doing battle and then her taking up this quest, her just being a little kid being kind of bullied by other elves and sailing her ship. I kind of feel like that isn't part of the epilogue.
But I think what it
or
does
prologue,
is
not epilogue, prologue. Sorry, we keep saying epilogue. Prologue.
Sorry, yeah, prologue. So I think that the idea is that it's establishing that her brother is important to her,
Mm,
and then when we lose him, like we know, like, oh, this is a big deal
right.
to her, and yeah, I think that's the idea there, and
That's fair.
and it is showing like the beginning of time, how things were like nice before everything fell apart.
True.
And then the light goes away and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
No,
guess
do
just
think-
because
I
it's
do-
the first
I-
thing you see, it's gonna have that scrutiny to it.
I was gonna add, I still think, because Finrod, her brother, whispers something to her. They should have kept that more mysterious.
Yes.
But I do get at the end. They do kind of. This is what. Well, we'll come back to it at the end.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think, and this is why I think it should have been a flashback, because I think you couldn't reveal it in moments where that line has more impact and more weight, maybe. But anyway. So yeah, I don't hate this kind of the battle scene that we get. Like, it's kind of a bit slow-mo.
The visuals are fine.
Yeah, the visuals are good. For the most part, the visuals are good in this show, and that's something that people can't really argue with. They do a lot of practical, which I love. So I think the visuals are pretty good.
And I wrote down the quote, "We thought the war would be over quickly." I'm like, that's history, isn't it? Everyone thinks the war is going to be over quick, and then it's not.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's right from World War II type stuff. So yeah. So when we get to Galadriel, in modern day, on climbing her mountain.
Well, I wrote, the visuals fine, but I can see why the other elves were like kind of done with their shit at this point.
Yeah. So I actually, this is why it's weird. We started with, and this is why I'm kind of, I get what you're saying about the prologue, but that prologue moment where she's bullied by some elves, and then her brother steps in and gives her a piece of wisdom. And then we have the prologue battle, and then it cuts to her being not bullied by, but mutinied on by some elves. And she's not taking her brother's advice. She's taking it rather harshly. And these elves, they have done more than their duty. Like, they've gone above and beyond for her.
Yeah.
And she doesn't give them not even a thank you. It's more like, we keep going, we press on, and it's,
yeah, she's not even acknowledging.
yeah, like the fact that they've come all this way, they have gone against, they have followed her despite their king ordering her company back home.
Yep.
So this mutiny, when it comes up, it's not like it came out of nowhere. It's they've been saying, hey, we're tired of this. We haven't found anything. This is kind of a fool's errand. And yet we have just seen her.
But then they do turn around right when they find something.
Yeah, I know.
That was the thing. It's like, so here, this is what my note says. So Galadriel is determined, but she's not completely heartless, because she did stop when that one elf collapsed.
True.
But yeah, it seems like they stopped like right when they found like evidence that, oh yeah, he definitely escaped. Like, we found this castle, and this symbol, and this sign of like that they're experimenting with the unseen world, and then that's when they decide, okay.
Yeah, you know what? You don't know how long that symbol's been there. It's probably nothing. We're going home. I agree. I actually think they should have turned around before that and had her just go in by herself. That would have then allowed her to realize, I know I'm right, and then they still say, no, we're going home. They don't believe her because they didn't see it, and so it allows them to not seem silly. But these minor moments throughout that I do pick up on the second time. As far as like the visuals go, I thought they were pretty good. Obviously, there's some bits and pieces of dialogue every now and again that kind of just stick out weirdly. In here, it's one where she just like quickly picks up on the fact that like it's super cold. Like there's no warmth or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it on the second watch. Like
Yeah, and I was my overall thought of episode one. There is a lot of establishing who these characters are, which is
exactly.
I guess normal. But yeah, I said good job establishing Galadriel as being obsessive, and they establish her as a fighter because she takes on that troll like single-handedly.
Right, and so that troll scene, as much as the visuals look good, I actually think in that scene, when you compare it to the troll scene of the of Fellowship, there's something kind of weird about the choreography of the elves. I do wish they kind of did it a little bit more chaotic, because they all I know they're elves and they're like fierce warriors, but they all sort of like get into battle stance and go, and then it cuts to the troll coming in and he kind of throws an ice chunk at them.
Yeah, it's a good point. Actually, I didn't even think about that. Like, Merry and Pippin did better against the troll than these like highly trained elves did.
Right. So like, so to me, the reason that the troll scene with Fellowship works is because it's a bit more chaotic. Here, they get bulldozed by that rock chunk, and then if you watch it, there's a lot of them kind of just standing around watching as she fights it. And that's not the case in the Fellowship. In Fellowship, you can see out of the corner of the screen, like Gimli hitting.
All 9 of them are doing something.
Yeah, everyone's doing except for Frodo. Frodo's hiding, but that's part of it. Like that's part of who Frodo is, and that's okay. That's part of the movie. But in here, there are some elves that are literally standing around waiting to get snatched up by this troll. So like that's my only critique, is that visually the troll looks cool, and I get why they wanted to go in this like ragged, like snow crusted troll route. It looks very nice on screen. I just wish that they had figured out a better battle scene there, especially because it's our first battle scene that is in real time. I guess like looking back on Fellowship, you don't really get a ton of battle scenes in the first bit anyway, so maybe I should give it a pass here. But I because it's the first one, people like pick up on stuff, like they're really into the show at this point. They're just trying to figure it all out, and you really have to sell this battle scene. So that's my one little critique there. And then we get the true mutiny here, and I'm fine with the mutiny. The elves did nothing wrong. She's gone overboard, but then they find some clues, so it's like not. I still think they should go back and talk to the king, because the king is not evil. Like we don't think the king is evil at this point. So like, even though they find something, it's still time to go home and figure out where to go from here. Right? It's not. Yeah. It's not. Oh, we press on further north. No. We found some clues. Let's go figure out what to go next. So, she's still in the wrong for wanting to keep going. Here. And my notes say, "Oh God, the Harfoots." Now,
meaning the Harfoots.
I'm gonna give them a lot of leeway here to be fun little comic relief characters. I will say, as much leeway as I'm going to give them, I do think there are times where they run into the problem of almost parroting hobbits, which hobbits are supposed to represent almost in like an idyllic lifestyle of like this little farming town, and
it's not that at all. That's true.
Yeah, and these Harfoots are kind of like. They make fun of it sometimes, and they're like kind of goofy.
I think we need to dissociate our preconceived notions.
Yeah.
Of what a hobbit is supposed to be, because this is before there are hobbits.
True.
But we established similar. They are outsiders, and they're wary of men, and they're good at hiding.
Yeah.
I have that.
Yeah.
And then we meet Malva. I wrote down she seems more superstitious than Sadoc. And then we meet Nori, and she's adventurous. Poppy is more cautious, but at the same time, Nori is not wildly irresponsible. She still gets everyone home when she sees signs of the wolf.
True.
And she doesn't scare the younger Harfoots.
No, she does a good job there.
She lets Poppy know what's going on. They get everyone back without terrifying them.
Now, to your point about some of these characters, it does start to be a bit confusing for me. This is getting more nitty gritty into like me trying to understand Harfoot society, but Sadek, he's supposed to like be their elder, their leader, and he uses like this old book of like picture drawings of different people and different events happening to determine when to move positions. He sometimes seems to ignore some of the signs, which is pointed out to him a couple times. And I'm wondering like what, like, is he just so experienced that he knows like sometimes signs are misleading? Like he's like, the sky is strange. Oh, travelers this time of year. Like he doesn't seem to care that things are weird. He's just being cautious, but he's not like, I would expect him to be a little bit more freaked out about everything. But that's just me trying to figure out exactly how these Harfoots operate. I will say I like practical effects. They did great with this. The aesthetic looks awesome, and I do have criticism for some of the costumes in this show. It's not all great. The Harfoots are one of the consistently good costumes I find. Like everyone there looks gungy and gunky and as they should, right? They're hiding in holes and stuff, and they're traveling with like dirt on their wagons. I find that way too often fantasy shows will have these same characters be like pristine and like glowing almost, and so I think they got the visuals down for this group of characters.
Okay, so I think we go back to the elves. We meet
Yeah.
Elrond. We establish that he and Galadriel are old friends.
Romantic chemistry is off the charts in the scene, by the way. Just pointing that out there.
Okay.
Not that they're gonna get together, but I think, you know, if something were to happen, I wouldn't be against it.
I wrote that the Quenya, the Elvish language, feels authentic.
Yep.
And Galadriel is still determined to get it back out there, so she's obsessive, as I said before. More
Right.
character establishment.
Right, and I know they're friends, but again, and this is to her, like this criticism. It's not a criticism. This is just an observation, like you're doing, where Elrond is excited to see her. She's not as excited to see him because she's so determined to get back out there. It almost borderlines into like he is friends with her, but she's not friends with him at times. Like she's only using him as a means
to get to the king.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. I don't hate it. I'm just saying like it's an observation of mine that like he's like, hey, like calm down. Let's hang out a bit. We haven't seen each other in a while, and she is not interested in that. It's just. It's interesting to see how Elrond is trying to rekindle this friendship, and just he's curious about like her travels, and she has no interest in talking about it. She just wants to go. So, yeah, Galadriel's character definitely has problems, which I'm fully on board with, as long as the writers are aware of their problems and we start to work on them to bring her into what we know her to be. So far, yeah, she's a very troubled elf that does need some guidance somewhere from someone, and unclear where she's gonna get it exactly, because she doesn't seem to be interested in talking.
She doesn't listen to anyone. Yeah. So we meet Nori's dad. He's jovial. He's kind of a funny character.
Yeah.
And then her stepmom. I don't think we know that she's a stepmom yet, but Marigold is her stepmom, and she's cautious and isolationist, which lines up with what Harfoot culture seems to be. Whereas Nori is kind of like not like that. She's very curious about the world.
Which I mean, this is just another weird like Harfoot thing for me, and I'm trying my best to like not hate these Harfoots. I am, but their whole thing is traveling around, and yet to be an adventurer is to go against being a Harfoot. It's very weird that a group that migrates consistently doesn't ever try to see what else is just beyond the next. You know what I mean? Like they're in a constant fight or flight. Well, mostly flight mode. And then they constantly have to migrate to search for food and warmth. And they choose not to investigate slightly further than their strict path. It's just a weird quirk of their culture.
It is strange. They have like a set migration path and they won't go off of it.
Yeah, and they have sayings where like don't go off trail. Like it's just it's hard for me to like grasp this culture and like really like let it breathe for me when everything they do is like it doesn't seem to make sense of how I would view a Harfoot, for example. So, but again, I think everyone does a great job here. I even like the accents. I know back in the day people didn't like the accents. I kind of like the accents.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
So, yeah, so that's just my little quirk with the Harfoots. And then we get back to the elves, and we get to see the speech Elrond wrote. I don't like this speech. I don't think it's very good.
Hold on. Oh, I actually had.
You got more Harfoots. Okay.
Yeah. So like, there's just Largo in the background. He said, "That's your problem. A wheel is supposed to be round." So like, Largo is like a.
That's
funny
right.
character.
That's right. Oh, I forget about that. There's another one coming up in one of the things where he talks about.
The back. Or
Yeah,
the back.
the back or the back. Yeah. Yeah, there's some good moments from him. That's for sure. But yeah, we get to Elrond. He writes this speech. I'm not a fan of this speech. I don't know if that's the point. I'm kind of curious what you think. Was the point that he's a good speech writer, and that like he was struggling to write this speech when Galadriel first comes up?
I think it's supposed to be good. Yeah. I think.
I don't like it, and maybe it's because it should have been done all in Elvish. Maybe then it would be because this is the something that the creators of South Park picked up on. You can say super cheesy dialogue in another language, and nobody cares because it's dialogue that they don't hear. They read it, and it's not cheesy when they read it. And they make fun of this on one of the South Park episodes. So I think that's maybe what they could have done here. Make the speech all in Elvish just to add that heightened level to it. But I digress. It's not that big a deal. I just thought it was kind of funny that like they made a point to he was stuck on this one part of the speech, and then when we hear it, it's like it's not. You didn't do a great job on it, Elrond. You did okay, I guess. It's. I think it could have been better.
I noted that he says "Days of Peace begin," and he's like looks at Galadriel when he says that.
Yeah.
So he's like kind of.
Yeah, he
like, knows she's obsessed, and he's sending her to Valinor to get her out of here.
Yeah. Like, you've done a good job. We are now at peace. Yeah, I like that too. I picked up on that too. It's good. Now, I will say this is one of the... So, the wardrobe, it's kind of hit or miss on some of these races. Elves are kind of hit or miss with me. In this scene, I'm pretty good with it. There's other scenes where I'm not as okay with it. But I just wanted to like mention that here so that when it comes up again... Some of the races are elves, dwarves, and Numenor are the ones that are hit or miss with the costume department on. So the set's still great though. Like the set is beautiful, and this is one of like the stills that was released like a year out before they did the show. It looks great, and I see why they keep coming back to this set. It's fun and it's magical. So. Yeah, I like this set. I think it really does feel like a land of elves here. Yeah.
So we have Galadriel visits her brother's memorial, and it's statues carved in like it's dead soldiers or dead elves who have been carved into these trees.
Yeah.
And I think that's going into like she's still obsessed. She's obsessed.
Yeah, because she says she wanted to be a tree. She wanted to be one of these carvings.
They're driving it home that she is obsessed.
Yeah.
Galadriel is. Galadriel said, did she say this? Evil doesn't sleep, it waits.
Yeah.
Compelling.
Honestly, there's some on revisit. There actually is some decent dialogue that I was like. I didn't see that because as I was watching it, I was still fixated on the dialogue that I didn't like, and I missed some of the good dialogue. So I'm actually okay with some of it. Now I will say, Elrond, I don't know what the direction the actor got here. He kind of like sneaks up on Galadriel in this weird like he's like spying on her kind of thing. I wrote down maybe he's Sauron. Anyway, this starts a bit of a problem I have as a fan of the films more than the books, where I don't know if the films, in particular this show, because I think Peter Jackson does it great in the original trilogy, the lore of the elves, it's unclear to me what they're talking about from a person who's just watching the show. And I know this to be true because I've watched it with people who don't know anything else about Lord of the Rings, and they ask me questions based on this conversation here, where they're talking about Valinor and they're talking about leaving and she's being honored and all this stuff. And she comes at it as if like she's being benched. She like, oh, you guys are going to continue the fight without me and you're putting me on the sideline. Like, and she's like, oh, I'll never get to finish my task. And it's unclear. Like I thought in Valinor she'd be able to still like do good deeds in Valinor. Like, I'm just kind of confused based on this dialogue if the elves even understand their own lore, or maybe she's just so obsessed that she's like not even thinking clearly about what happens in Valinor. Because like Elrond thinks it's a great honor still. He's like, and he's sad to see her go, but at the same time he's not sad because it's not like they're dead. They're just in Valinor. It's so. Yeah, it's just these kind of scenes. I don't know how to fix them. I just know that from a casual viewer perspective, they're confusing.
Yeah, she doesn't want to go to Valinor.
Right, and everyone else does.
Yeah.
So it's like, why not? And she has unfinished business, but okay, what's so great about Valinor? Why does everyone want to go there? Why don't they just all go? Like, they do try to. Like I think they do.
They don't really explain that why.
They try to hint at it, and we see that with Celebrimbor later, but for now it's kind of confusing.
Okay, so I think we're in the Southlands now, and
yeah,
the village seems well done to me. We meet Arondir. He's like a smart guy because he walks by and he like tells that guy how he can win in 3 moves.
Yeah.
And he has got good hearing. He can hear them say poisoning.
Yeah.
And then we meet Bronwyn. I think my notes get pretty sparse here. I just wrote true king myth. And Arondir stops Waldrick from punching Rowan. He's calm. So Arondir's like calm, cool, and collected. Whereas
so my notes just trail off into a big fan gush about Waldrick. I will say, of all the sets in this show, which are great, his tavern might be the best. I've said it before. Most places get taverns wrong. They modernize them to the point where it's almost like a modern
that's
cottage.
True. That's a good point.
His hut and his acting, it feels so real. Like that's a tavern. There's nothing. There's a few benches. There's a little place for him to cut some meat, and there's a fire. That's it. That's all there was. Yeah. And also his outfit, just an apron. I don't even know if he's wearing pants under there. I don't even know. It's just an apron, and it's awesome. It's a great look, and the actor, I think the actor steals the scene here, even though it's supposed to be about an elf coming in here and the racism between humans and elves. Waldrig is still just he's just a fun kid. Like he just walks up and goes to punch this kid. It's just so good. But yeah, so we get I guess a lot of the casuals will get a much deeper appreciation for the elves and how they are everything is basically heightened with them, it seems.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can see why animosity might grow between the humans and the elves. Not only the unusually long lifespan of elves, which is almost they're immortal. Essentially, they are immortal if they choose to go to Valinor. So humans have to cope with death like that. And at the same time, the elves are just better than them with almost all of their senses. They're stronger than them, everything. So you can see why these humans feel subjugated, even though the elves might not see it that way.
Okay, so we got Bronwyn and Arondir in the back, and there's like Alpharin seeds. He hasn't seen these since he was a child, so it's a kind of flirty. And then I wrote, I ship it. A cute relationship.
Yeah, I think we all do, and even the townsfolk, everyone's talking about it. That's why Theo's dad left. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself.
I think I wrote, why would Theo's dad leave? Bronwyn is perfect.
I think
it made me think about that too, because there's this thing that went on with like her and Tom Cruise. Like she was like offered to Tom Cruise as like a Scientology perk. And
I think I do remember this.
And he ended up like, I don't know, I think she said something like feminist and it pissed him off.
So he's like, nope, not that one.
Not that one. And then she got and then she was just expressed that she was sad that the relationship was over. And then a Scientology like went off at her for speaking bad about Tom Cruise, I think. Something like that. But anyway, I was thinking like, what was Tom Cruise thinking? This woman's like in her late 40s. She's still absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
I think Tom Cruise screwed up, but
well, I actually make a point to say, of all the for whatever reason, I know the reason, everyone else in this town is given rags. She's in this, she is in an amazing outfit that really makes her stand out, which I know is kind of the point, but at the same time, who is she that she's almost like got like luxury clothing compared to everyone else around here.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a weird contrast there.
Well, they're doing that. Well, actually, I don't know. This is probably a terrible analogy, but I'm thinking of Schindler's List.
Well, it's
the woman, the little girl in the wreck.
So yeah, there's other movies that do that, like Sin City, if you want to get a bit closer to this. But you're right, Schindler's List does a good job of it too. But yeah, so like that's kind of what they're doing. I don't know if it works for me. Like I kind of wish she fit in a bit better, but at the same time, I get it. Like she's supposed to be. You're almost supposed to view her as from the elves' perspective. Like she stands out. So yeah. So yeah, we get some little.
We meet the elf friend. And we established that this relationship is not approved by the other elves. And he talks about how all elf-human relationships end. This only happened twice, and they both ended in tragedy and death.
Yeah. I actually think we should have gotten more here. Maybe there's some extended cut version. I would have liked to hear more from all these other elves that are on watch here, because I think that's part of what's missing from this part of the world, where we get the side of the townspeople who are upset that the elves are constantly checking in on them, and I want to get the point of view of the elves. We get a little bit of it. We get a bit, especially from the commanding officer here, where he's like, we're not here because this region was fighting with Sauron. We're here because these people were fighting with Sauron or something like that. And it's like, oh, so this guy still views them as like.
But he is right. Like Waldrick, I think Waldrick is like a cult leading like an underground cult.
Yeah, he was right, but yeah, I'm not saying he wasn't right. He was right, but but I wish we got more of that dynamic where we got the townspeople saying like, leave us alone, like you're basically an army that has invaded us and hasn't left, and you constantly are coming in and like investigating us, and meanwhile they are correct to do so. Waldrick has been, like, I don't understand, he's been like secretly somehow he's got the sword and
it's about colonialism.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I like the dynamic.
But the undertone is that colonialism is actually good.
Right. So and this is part of the problem with some of these shows where they forget what their meaning is behind some of this stuff. But in the end, I actually like a lot of these elves as well. I think they all do a pretty good job.
Yeah. So they're disbanding the outpost. He's been there for 79 years. Yeah. And then the cow comes by and there's like sludge that comes out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Arondir goes to Bronwyn, right? And then
because he's gonna stay. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay. Then
we find out, that cow ate that poison grass that they were talking about.
Yeah, we've solved the mystery.
So I wrote Arondir, more character establishment. Arondir is proactive. He could have just gone home, but he goes to Hodern to investigate.
Yeah. Now a couple things. One, I don't understand how far removed are we from the elves leaving? Like, are they still in the region? Could he not go to them and say, "Hey, hold on a second, there might be something here that we should maybe look at just before we go." Also, Bronwyn going with him seems like a bad idea. Like, I get she explains why. I'm just like, it's kind of like it's just the two of you going by yourselves to a place that's like kind of sketch right now. All right, this might not go well. I don't think it ends up being that bad of a decision. It's just I thought maybe they should bring more people, like some townsfolk or something.
Yeah. Someone who knows what they're doing, like Waldrick.
Yeah, bring Waldrick. I love him. Get him more screen time, please. Yeah.
So we're back to the ship to Valinor.
Right.
Galadriel is like being haunted by being
there. So before we get to the ship part, because you probably have some notes, but I'm kind of confused. I've watched this on this revisit. She's already said she's not going, and yet she's getting on this ship. Now everyone knows she's not going. I don't get this whole point. Is it just to show us what it's like to get close to Valinor? Because
that's true. Like, yeah, maybe that's a good visual.
But like, her character doesn't make sense to get on the ship.
Well, like, I think like we want to like make it seem like there was like an actual internal struggle. Like Elrond got to her. Like,
true,
like,
you're right. The previous scene, Elrond does do a good job convincing her.
And she's like, okay, well, if something does happen, at least Elrond's promised me he'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And she's been told to go. She knows she's being sent there, so she's like, okay, this is like it's like being told to resign. Like, okay, I have to do it. So she's on the boat. She's really weighing it, and it's eating her more and more. And then they play into that quote. Sometimes you have to touch the darkness or whatever, to know where the light is. And then we know she's really struggling because she's willing to jump out in the middle of the ocean to do this, and her plan is just to swim back.
Yeah. So, you being really charitable here. Like, good job on you. Because like, goddamn, there's no way she's getting back.
Well, that's how determined she is.
Yeah.
She's so determined that she's willing to jump into the ocean.
Yeah, I guess they gotta. I just think there's maybe ways to make that a bit more clear, because from my perspective, this is suicide. Like, and does she know that, or is she just insane?
Is it absolutely established? Like, I guess it is. because I don't quite understand the dynamics, but I guess going to Valinor is a one-way trip. You can't go back once you go in.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. So it's unclear to me.
Because maybe like just go to Valinor for like a few years, see how you feel.
Yeah. Now I will say, I think this scene is important. I don't want to get rid of the ship scene as much as I don't think it works as well as it should, because in the original trilogy, we do have Galadriel finally say, "Okay, I can now go to the Undying Lands." So it does work in that regard for me, where if we build up to that kind of Galadriel, we're gonna get to see that full transition, and this will help heighten that moment in the original trilogy. But it just, this jumping off this ship is kind of crazy to me, and a lot of things have to go right for this to work. Is my problem. Which when that happens in a story, it's usually kind of just random stuff happening. It doesn't really do anything with the plot as much. So that's my worry when she jumps off this ship, is like, this is a crazy action from a crazy individual that's going to need a lot of luck and a lot of random events happening for her to even have a chance at success. Which sometimes you need for your character, but this it just seems a bit much, especially in this situation where there should be no ships out like here. This is just for elves. No one's gonna be out here.
She's got a long swim. Okay. So the High King so we found the High King actually does believe Galadriel that Sauron is out there, but he thinks that she will awaken dormant evil, so she'll make it happen. There'll be like self-fulfilling prophecy, this sort of thing. True. So it says true and not true, because like he thinks she'll awaken the evil. I did comment that Adar and this orc thing was already going on, even without Galadriel being a factor here. So there still would have been, Mordor still would have formed, and she did bring Sauron into the picture. That is true. But all this Adar stuff happened completely independently of Galadriel.
Yeah, and right under the elves' noses too.
Yeah.
But so my note says the High King has been set up to be a puppet master, and in this scene you can see him buying off Elrond, buying his loyalty. So I kind of like that. It's not that he's an evil king. He's almost just set up to be an impediment to some of our characters, not in like a I want to do harm to people, but in a I'm the king and what I say goes and I believe this. So I kind of like that dynamic, especially with elves. I always like it when elves get too high and mighty for their own good. So I'm hoping that we get to see a little bit of a fall from grace for this guy, but I do like how he's first established here. So yeah, that's my take on the king right now.
So we're bringing Celebrimbor in.
Yep. I've had some harsh things to say about this actor. There are some scenes where he's really good. I will say that. He's not all bad. He's a decent actor at times. There's just sometimes his character can be silly in a way that is not becoming of the elf that I know. The elves that I know.
So now we have Sadik going through star charts, and
this is getting to what my thing is, like the skies are strange, and yet he doesn't seem too concerned about it. That he's concerned, but not like like he's been given clues to move, and he's like not given the go ahead. So it's unclear what like is going on with his book. I wish we knew more.
And then I have Nori is curious, and then Sadik just shuts it down. Like he doesn't want to tell her anything about this.
You can't know the secrets. Now, it's interesting though. She's curious. Doesn't someone need to be curious to get the job to open this book and do the sky charts? Like someone has to take up the mantle. Maybe instead of shutting the book in her face, you start to you start to say, oh, she could maybe take over for someone down the road. I should start cultivating her interest in these things.
Yeah.
So I just, these little things where I'm like, why is everyone so like harsh against Nori? It's her dad is nice. Her dad appreciates her, but everyone else is like, you're rather strange, Harfoot, aren't you? Yeah.
So we're back to Bronwyn and Arondir says something that the people of Hordor were very loyal to Sauron, and then Bronwyn kind of gets offended by that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're gonna get more of that. I like those. I like that dynamic where they are in love, but at the same time they're still struggling with these racist, the racist tendencies they have towards each other in a weird way. It's kind of a interesting dynamic to have.
Galadriel goes all the way to the gates of Valinor. This shows how torn she is. She wants to, do I obey the king or do I continue my quest? She remembers her brother's wisdom and bails into the open ocean. She sees the light of Valinor and the light in the sky and knows which light to follow.
Did you read the script? Is that in the script?
That's what I wrote here.
Oh, that might literally be the scene direction to the script for all I know. God damn. I wrote, she goes a bit crazy and jumps in the water. So, I know the ship isn't gonna turn around, but it's weird that we got this far. I think it would be just as impactful. I know they wanted to show Valinor. I think it would be just as impactful for her to be on the deck of the ship as it's setting sail and then turning back, like right in that moment, or having a build up as she walks towards the ship. You can have that same idea. She's walking towards this ship. It's gonna go, and as she gets on it, this isn't right, and she leaves, and she has to flee because now she's basically going against the king. Something like that. It's just the swimming thing. What you've said is right. She, despite her impending doom by jumping into the ocean, she knows it's the right thing to do because she isn't ready to go to Valinor. I just don't like it. I just wish it was. I wish it wasn't so happenstance like that. I wish it had more believability that like she's not going to survive this. Like this, you could just say roll credits, end of the show. She's dead. Like she shouldn't survive this, right? Like this should be over for her. She is so far out there. People she's in the middle of like the Atlantic Ocean.
Boats don't go there. Yeah.
Nobody goes this far, and so basically she, for the elves that go to Valinor, they probably think she's dead because she just dives off into the ocean, and that's my one issue here is that this ends up taking us on a crazy journey through the water that has a lot more of that happenstance happening instead of her making decisions. So episode 2, when we get to it, I think is weaker because of the decision to have her jump off the ship here, because it doesn't allow her to have as much agency. And I guess that's my true issue with this, is that the character is no longer in any sort of control of anything. It's things are happening to her. But that is the end of episode 1.
Well, we have the Cancer Leaf fall.
Oh, true. We have like a bit of a hint.
And Nori does go to this meteor crater, and the stranger is in there.
Oh, that's right. That is at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
Because that's where we start episode 2. But yeah, the leaf falling I think is a good scene. I like that it's included. It even got me thinking that like Gil-galad could be Sauron just because of that moment, which I think is fun. Obviously, I knew the whole time it wasn't gonna be Gil-galad. I didn't want it to be super obvious, but here we are. But yeah, anything else to add? I mean, I think the episode, it's not as strong as it probably could have been, but it's stronger than I remember.
It's a lot of just character establishment.
Yeah.
And like when we've removed our preconceived notions, or attempted to, like maybe it's okay. I don't know.
Right. So for like the Harfoots, I need to work on that a lot. The elves, though, the elves, they shouldn't have as much of a drastic change because elves are very stubborn.
Yeah, not
and,
culturally. Yeah, you're right. There.
And they like Elrond is going to change quite a bit. And I'm going to support that change because I actually like this Elrond character we have, and I like the Elrond character in the original trilogy, but that he's an unusual elf in that regard. Most elves are not going to be like that, and they're going to hold firm to their ideas and their culture for millennia. And so that's why there are times where Celebrimbor is weird in a weird way. Doesn't seem natural elf just because of his mannerisms, because we're used to the mannerisms of the elves in the original trilogy and in the Hobbit movies too, and they're all very consistent. So that's my one area where I think like my preconceived notions shouldn't be affected here. I should still be able to enjoy these elves, and for the most part I do. It's just there's moments where it's kind of weird. But yeah, all in all, I think I did appreciate it more knowing, look, we have to establish these characters. We can't just jump in off the deep end. The original trilogy has an easier job because they can start with one character, Bilbo, Frodo, and then Gandalf gets in, and then like they can add characters as they go because it's always within that purview. Here they have to jump back and forth to all these different people that aren't interacting yet, and so they do have a harder job. They don't have enough time. Like an entire episode should have been dedicated to just one character, and that would have probably been better, but they want to tell different stories, which I fully support. So I get you're gonna have limited time in each episode to do that. But all in all, my final takeaway is that dialogue is not as bad as I originally thought. I've recently rewatched The Return of the King. There is some comparable dialogue. Not that Return of the King dialogue is bad. There's comparable dialogue in here that shows me that there is some good dialogue that works. There's just others that they maybe try too hard, and I get that. I would probably do the same thing. You have a lot to live up to with what's happening in the original trilogy. So I'm going to try and keep that in mind as we move forward. So let me know, let us know down below, how many times have you guys watched the first episode, and have you guys watched it recently? And try it, because you might be pleasantly surprised.